Hello everyone, this is Diane. I have finished the music-themed journals, at least the first two. These have both been reserved for customers, but I want to show them to you, so I'm going to go through them now. I really enjoyed these and I think they turned out quite nice. And I have a few extra pieces that didn't get put in from the Stamperia paper pad called Music. So as I go through the books, I'm going to tuck these in. I have two tags for each book. There's just a large journaling card and then this envelope, which I didn't even glue shut. So I had so much ephemera from various places that I just didn't put these in, but hopefully I'll find a place for them in these books. And all the other pieces of ephemera that I have left over from Mrs. Coggs and my vintage music magazines and all that, they can be used in the next journals I'm going to make. So let's start with the large blue one. It measures 7 by 10 1/4. It's got a very luxurious feeling cover. And as I mentioned, this book was all about how to buy an oriental rug. So it's just a luxurious looking book. And I love the gilding in the corners. And I only covered up a tiny bit of it. I tried very hard not to bring this fabric over too far to cover up too much of that. I just tied it with a light blue seam binding ribbon. And I have this image, which came from some scrapbooking paper, and I don't remember if I cut it out of something or if somebody sent it to me. I had a little collection of these in with my music memorabilia that I'd been saving, or ephemera things. And then this is from Mrs. Coggs. I used two of her kits, the piano and the sounds of music. So I have two different kits of hers throughout both journals, and I still have pieces left over. This is the original end paper. It looks like a fibrous paper, so I left that there. I had collaged on this vintage file tab card. I put an O there for Overture, or I used the O card for Overture, and added this velvet ribbon. This is a vintage velvet ribbon. And these pieces came from a DCWV stack called Performance. And it's an old stack. I could not find it again. I just looked online to see if I could find another package of it, and it's not available. I even looked on eBay. There's some pieces of lace and a little bit of filet crochet and a little bit of embroidery. There's a piece of gimp trim here. And the main papers in this book are from the Stamperia music paper. Love this one. I sewed some lace to the edges of the front page of each signature. I have these music flashcards, so I tucked some of those in throughout the book. And then these cards are from the Stamperia paper. Look at this beautiful, beautiful paper. And I did some stamping. There's a large keyboard stamp. I have a lot of music stamps, and I got to use them. Vintage music paper, and I just ruffled up this lace on the edge there. Some fabric flips throughout the books, and this is a piece of straw paper from Italy. I got that from Rachel at Roxy Creations on Etsy. I created some belly bands with collage. This is from a vintage music magazine, this image here. When I say vintage, it's from the 1920s. There's another of the flashcards, and I added a little snippet of the velvet ribbon. With the DCWV paper stack, there were a few sheets of the vellum with the gold on them, and so each journal has two of those pieces. That's all I had left. Love that. This paper is from Italy also. I got this from Rachel. It came out of a notebook. I have some music books about music. And so I used several pages from those books in these journals. Here I added a glassine envelope with one of the Stamperia tags and a Mrs. Coggs tag. There's a stamp of some composers. And this is from a landscape situated organ book, very vintage. Here's another page from one of my music books about music, and I just clipped this on there. I was going to put some seam binding on the paper clips, and I didn't do that. I'll try to remember. Just glued a little lace with ribbon in it there. Lots of space for journaling on this center page. It's just a section of music there. Here we have a blue little sack that I just decorated with a little scrapbook, well, not a cut apart piece of the DCWV paper. It says music and a piece of vintage lace and this tag that I made and then glued on one of Mrs. Coggs' images. Fits right in there. And behind it is a Stamperia tag and a Mrs. Cogg image. Here's the other half of the vellum page. I used another tab card and did a collage on it and just sewed it on as a pocket. It has vintage sheet music, 2 different pieces, a little stamp that I did, some pieces of scrapbook paper, and embroidery and filet crochet. This is an advertisement from the 1920s music magazine, and I just glued it to some. Oh, I covered up a quote there when I sewed the tab on. It says, where words fail, music speaks. Hans Christian Andersen. And I just sewed a tab on there. I took some of the scraps of paper and put them together to make this pocket and just tucked a couple little pieces underneath that piece so that they're just hanging there. And there's this beautiful tag with a beautiful Mrs. Coggs image. The other half of the straw paper, I just did a fold on it and stamped there. And here I added 2 pockets that I sewed on. Mrs. Coggs' image became a pocket with some lace, and just a little card from the Stamperia paper became a pocket. Put that in there, and this is 1952 music flashcard. I think somebody sent those to me. I'm pretty sure I didn't buy those. But I got quite a few of them, and I think I used almost all of them in these 2 books. There's a little stamp of a piano. It did go through here. If you don't like that, you can cover that with something. There's some embroidery that I sewed onto this beautiful blue and white fabric and added some lace, and it became a flip. Second signature starts with a beautiful harp image. There's Mozart, a stamp that I have. Another flip with some yellow lace on the straw paper. There's another belly band, and this image came from a children's dictionary, vintage. Some lace at the top and bottom, a little piece of that gold candy wrapper, and a music flashcard. You may notice the stenciling and foiling and a little bit of stamping I did on the white backs of some of the pages. I have a video. More of them are in the other book because the Stamperia paper is double-sided. The DCWV, which is featured in the other book, has a white side. So there's just some inking and stenciling in a couple of different colors, and I just rubbed some foil on it and did a little bit of stamping. This is a piece of tracing paper, and I printed on one side of it. This is Antique Shabby Papers, I think it's called, from Tailor Made Journals. It's a wonderful set of papers that you can just print on the backs of things and then use them for journaling. So this is taking the place of the vellum in the center signature, because I only had 4 pieces of vellum, so one went in the front and one went in the back signature of each book. So in the middle, there's tracing paper. I have gilding on my fingernail. You'll see why when I show you the next journal. This is from another book about musical instruments, and it's a beautiful picture of a harpsichord. 2 keyboards there. There's a pipe organ back here. Another glassine envelope with a harp on the tag, and this image. The boy having lessons. Beautiful violin stamp. There's a sketch of a violin player. Came from one of my books. Lots of room for journaling here. Again, a pocket made with some of the scraps and some lace added. And this lady is playing sweet harp music. And there's a quote here by Mozart. And there's a French horn. This is typing paper. I think I said tracing paper, but it's typing paper. There's some embroidery up there. I stamped on this piece of straw paper and added the pockets again and just little rosettes. This one has a little booklet, little folder. There's a vintage flashcard and a tag up here. And there's Beethoven. Now here we have a Mrs. Coggs image of a lady playing the piano with an admirer listening. And tucked in behind it is a vintage ad with a lady playing an organ. And a tab on it. It says, "The first thing I want after we win this war." So I was thinking this ad was from the 50s, but it must be from the 40s. Oh yeah, that Etude magazine was pretty old. Third signature. There's a grand piano. Some pretty lace sewn on there. Some embroidery there. And this is a scrap of the vellum that I sewed to a piece of blue cardstock and turned that into the belly band. There's a little girl practicing the piano, one of the vintage ads from the magazine. And this is just a card featuring a Renoir painting of a little girl practicing. It says, "Young girls at the piano." There's Beethoven again. And here is another piece of the vellum with this beautiful design on it. There's a pipe organ there from a book. There's a little girl tentatively playing the piano, holding her dolly in her hand. And there's a bust of Beethoven, and I stamped his signature there. And there's another pocket that I pieced together, and a music flashcard, and this tag. Lady being serenaded by a guitar singing gentleman, guitar playing gentleman. Mozart's signature. And there's my favorite Renoir painting of 2 girls at the piano. And I love this one. She's the cover on the other book. And this is a quote by Bach. This is just a stamp that I have with many of the composers' names. And here is another advertisement for the Denver College of Music. I kept finding ads for Ithaca, like a music college in Ithaca, New York. I just sewed a little tiny piece of lace right there. And Ithaca is pretty close to where I live, so I looked it up. I looked it up on Google, and it was a conservatory of music there for 50 years, and then it is now Ithaca College. Well, I knew there was an Ithaca College there. I didn't know it started out as a conservatory of music, so that was interesting. All right, so that's one book, and I believe this one is for Beatrice. Oh, and I forgot to look for places to put these things. So this one was just a plain burgundy cover. It was a novel, I think. I don't really remember. I just put a little gold artsy paint on there. And my artsy paint is getting dry. It was very creamy, and now it's not. So I'll probably have to add some water to it and let it sit. But I just rubbed that, and that's why I have gold on my fingers. And then I added this Mrs. Coggs image and this little decorative piece from the DCWV papers. Oh, I think I'm going to add some trim to the spines. I forgot to do that. So I'm just going to glue some laces or something on the spines. Got a large clump of paint there. Okay, it's pretty much the same setup here. Well, right here is where I can put that, because I didn't put anything in there. There, took care of that. And I used brown laces on the edges, and then instead of Stamperia paper, it's the DCWV paper. So I had to decorate the backs of all of those papers. That took some time. Again, the stamp bled through there. It doesn't bother me. I would write there. But if you want to, you can glue something there. There's some pink lace on the edge. And there's another belly band. I love these old ads. I used some of the Handy Bar chocolate wrapper there. This one just has a piece of filet crochet sewn to the edge. Some embroidery there. This piece was cut from the cover sheet of the Stamperia paper. I got quite a few pieces that I can use. Like anything that's white on the back from that was from the cover. So I like the way they design their covers to show their pieces of paper, because now I can cut them up and use them as cards. Playtime Melodies. Some vintage velvet ribbon there. I used my music stamp on this piece of blue paper back there to add some added texture. This needs something else. There's a grand piano. Piece of lace sewn on the edge there. Look at this little girl. I did add little scraps of doilies to some of the pages that I colored. Look at these little kittens with the guitar. There's a tag back here. Now on this envelope, little sack, this is one of the sacks that I made with my die that I have. I put the word duet on there, and then I looked for an image that I could use for a duet, and I thought this was perfect. The little girl on her violin and the dog howling. Perfect duet, unless you're in the same room with them. Again, this is a different image from the antique shabby papers from Tailor Made Journals. This one has a little folder in it and a vintage flashcard. Music is, I can't remember now, I covered it up. Music is Something Life. You wouldn't think this was a painting about music until you look closely, and there's a violin. She's kind of plucking the strings of the violin. She has the bow in her hand. It's not very prominent in the painting. There's a quote by Chopin right on the top of that paper. This piece of lace was wide, and I wrapped it around. The Virgil School of Music. This is from the Masterpiece game. It's a lady playing the piano. That's another Renoir. This was from that cover page again. So you get an image, that beautiful image too. I had to trim down Mrs. Coggs' images to fit on these little tags, but I chose ones that the main image would still be pretty much intact. I love this page. This, I stamped the lyre on this page and it didn't stamp very well, so then I just stamped it on coffee dyed tracing paper. I had a scrap of it and this glued it over where I had attempted to stamp. And here is a tag that says share, because they're sharing the music. There's a harp on this paper. Love this piece of vellum. I love all the vellum. This one has a violin underneath. There's a definition of classical. Westminster Choir, and this is in Ithaca, New York. Choir School. It said Westminster Choir School. This was cut from the cover piece, and there was just a triangle there that was just brown. And I just cut that off, and then I just sewed this on and continued the angle and made the pocket that way. So there they are. Those are the music journals that I've been working on. So I'm going to contact the people that wanted them and let them know they're available. I will start oh, sorry, I just got a twinge in my back. I will start working on the next pair of journals when I have a chance. I don't know how much I'll be on YouTube for a little while. Like I said in a previous video recently that I just listed my house. I have someone wanting to come and see it. You know, I won't be here, but I have to make sure everything's ready, which means I'm not even going to go into everything I need to do, but I got stuff to do. So, this is part of my job. This is not just a hobby. If it was just my hobby, I would put everything away and be done with it until I move. But it's also part of my job. So I am going to attempt to keep working on journals in between all this other stuff going on. So, like I said, I don't know how much I'll be on YouTube, but I will be a presence, just not as often as I have been. I appreciate your support of everything. I mean, you guys are so good, not just about the creating that I do, but my little stories about what's going on in my life. You let me know that you appreciate that, and that just warms my heart. And you're rooting for me to get my house sold and get moved into a new place, and I just appreciate it all so much. So keep watching my channel. Please watch some of my other videos that you haven't watched yet. Keep up my viewing, so that I don't lose momentum there, because that's part of my income too. But also, just so we can still be a part of each other's lives. And I think that's it. So I will be back when I get a chance to. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.